this is something that's bugging me here, and just because of your esteemed legal background, your input on it. Attorney General Merrick Garland, who could have been one of the Supreme Court justices, yesterday, day before, instructed the FBI to mobilize against parents who oppose critical race theory in public schools. That, to me, is very, very scary. It is terrifying of what is going on in this country.
Yes, it's terrifying. And what's scary to me is that everything that I've read about what they have said they're trying to do is very vague, which means that somebody somewhere in the bowels of government are making decisions about the details of what is going to be enforced, what's not going to be enforced, what are these agents doing, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So I'm concerned about it. Parents have a right to to shape their kids' education. They should be the primary people shaping it. I don't know if you saw this in Virginia.
Have we designated them now as terrorists?
Yeah,
if you speak up at a board meeting?
It's scary. It's scary what's happening.
Let me read a little bit of this one. Here's the memorandum. In recent months, there's been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence against school administrators, board members, teachers, staff who participate in vital work of running our nation's public schools. While spirited debate about policy matters is protected under our Constitution, that protection does not extend to the threats of violence or efforts to intimidate individuals based on their view. Threats against public servants are not only illegal, they run counter to our nation's core values. And he goes on and on and on. But why would the Attorney General of the nation, I mean, if they break any laws there, the laws are already in place. Why do we need this?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the exact point is laws are already in place. You already have the right to investigate if somebody goes nuts. So investigate the ones that are nuts, but don't make broad, generalized statements about parents being engaged in this debate about what their children are being taught. Did you see this Virginia governor's debate last week? They're having this debate. Terry McAuliffe stands up in the debate and says, parents really shouldn't be the ones telling schools what to teach their children. I'm like, is that really what you believe?
Well,
I think that's the ideology.
The new guy from the Department of Education.
Absolutely.
So the parents shouldn't be the primary source for them to learn.
Yeah.
Well, the other part of that is, and I'll march on to something else, but in the end of the final paragraph here's what the Attorney General said in his memorandum. To this end, I am directing the Federal Bureau of Investigation, working with each United States attorney, by the way, a lot of them with George Soros money of the district attorneys, to convene meetings, but this is with the U.S. attorney, to convene meetings with federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial leaders in each federal judicial district within 30 days. These meetings will facilitate the discussion of strategies for addressing threats against school administrators, board members, teachers, et cetera, and will open dedicated lines of communication for threat reporting. So if you report Becky, she's going to be on some terrorist list now.
It's nuts.
And that is scary, especially when you have the president saying this.
Tonight, I'm announcing that the Transportation Safety Administration, the TSA, will double the fines on travelers that refuse to mask. If you break the rules, be prepared to pay.
There you go. It sounds like a dictator to me.
Was that last night? When did he say this?
Yeah,
I missed
this
that.
was yesterday.
That's crazy. Crazy.
Let's get to home base here. Bolivar County a woman has been arrested by agents from the state auditor's office after she was indicted for fraud related to the Mississippi, to MDA, back to business grant. So this is the first one to bite the bullet on this one?
This is our first arrest related to embezzlement of COVID stimulus funds, correct. And the concern that I have is that we're spending a lot of stimulus money right now. We're going to continue to spend a bunch of stimulus money, and more money means more opportunity for fraud. So, we caught this case, and it's great. We caught it with the help of the third-party administrator who's helping to run the program and MDA. But going forward, the message that we want to send is if somebody out there is thinking about stealing a different pool of stimulus funds, they need to know that we are watching, that we're going to catch them at some point if they steal this money, and that we're out there trying to hold people accountable if they're going to steal taxpayer dollars.
This came from the CARES Act stimulus
Correct.
money. Now, Correct. How was this executed?
So Basically, the federal government passes the first round of stimulus. It comes to the state. That was about $1.25 billion that the state legislature could decide how to spend. One of the things they did with that pool of funds is to create a small business grant program called the Back to Business Grant Program. MDA, the Mississippi Development Authority, ran that program. And the idea behind the program is if you're a small business and you've been affected by COVID, you can apply for money from that program. Unfortunately, in this case, we had one individual who, through fraud, tried to file about $400,000 worth of grant requests from the program. Wow. At some point in the middle of her application process, after she'd already been given $38,500, she was identified as a fraud risk. That was reported to our office. We investigated it and ultimately made the arrest this week.
Her company was that she had was Lifeline Financial Freedom Solution. And this was in Bolivar County?
Correct.
Somebody has asked me, and we have this story, we talked about it several weeks ago, and I keep getting some questions on this, and I have no idea. The Bolivar County School District has a contract for $80,000 from a Memphis concern for public relations. And there are people in Cleveland and a lot of parents who are upset about this.
Yeah.
But there's nothing your office can do unless you get an official complaint on that?
First of all, that's news to me about this contract. Second of all, I would say this. There is stuff that we can do if there is fraud at the heart of a contract like that. So if the vendor, for example, was giving a kickback to the school board in exchange for the contract, then we could bear down on that and look into it. But this is the sad part of what happens sometimes in government. We cannot investigate stupid. That's the problem is if a board, a government entity, state agency legally spends money but they spend it on something that is dumb or wasteful, really we cannot hold them accountable for spending money on something that is dumb or wasteful. The ideal way of holding them accountable is at the ballot box, right? For the school board, it's holding them accountable by saying, if you're going to waste money, if you're going to spend whatever it is, $80,000 on a PR person to do nothing, then we're going to vote you out.
It would have to be somebody in government in that area or who are concerned attached to that one way or the other to come in and file a complaint.
If there's fraud at the heart of it, anybody could file a complaint, basically. But we have to have...
But they wouldn't know if it's fraud. I mean,
you'd have to have some indication that this is more than just...
stupid.
We don't like the way the money was spent. I'll give you a very basic
$80,000, Cleveland Public School District, for public relations out of a Memphis firm.
Yep.
I mean, you got to explain to a lot of people how this is not in the stupid column.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what they were doing for that money. And I'll say this, aside from the fraud cases that we handle, you know that I have been very critical of outside the classroom spending since I came into office. So I'm a public school graduate, love public schools. My mom was a public school teacher for 35 years. But we're seeing a trend in Mississippi where money being spent outside the classroom is going up, while the number of students in our public school system is going down. The number of teachers is going down.
You shone a lot of light on that, and I don't think it's made it any better.
I don't think it has either. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that we have to. We have a responsibility to tell people where their money is going, but ultimately, school boards on the front lines, MDE, they're the ones who are going to have to step up and say, we are going to cut outside of the classroom spending and